Randall "KOLO MUANI. You guys have almost definitely heard of his name by now for one of the following three reasons: his big chance in the World Cup final, his huge money move to PSG, or recent links to Manchester United. And of course today we are very much focusing on the latter. Should Manchester United bring KOLO MUANI into the club this January on loan? There is a lot to talk about. His stats over the past few seasons, his performance in terms of the eye test, and actually just whether tactically he fits in at Manchester United or not. All things we will be looking at today, but before we get into that, if you could quickly subscribe to the channel, that would be greatly appreciated. We've got some huge goals for this year, but to reach those goals, I need you guys to subscribe. So if you could do that, that would be greatly appreciated. And then we'll look at KOLO MUANI. So the first thing that I want to do with KOLO MUANI is look at things from a statistical point of view, because I think there is very much this view that since his move to PSG, he hasn't been very good. But when we take a look at the numbers, that doesn't actually seem to be true. For PSG, he has played a total of 2,688 minutes, which is roughly the equivalent of 30 90-minute matches. And in that time, he has scored 14 goals and 7 assists. So that's 21 goal contribution in the equivalent of 30 90-minute matches. That's not too bad at all. And also at Frankfurt, his numbers were very good as well. For Frankfurt, he played 3,634 minutes, which is roughly 40 90-minute matches. And in that time, he scored 23 goals and secured 17 assists. So that's 40 goal contributions now in the equivalent of 40 90-minute matches. So again, that's a very good rate of return in terms of his goal contributions. His output in the final third actually looks really good for the past 3 or 4 seasons now. However, one thing which is slightly against him on this front is when we look at the expected goals, because actually the amount of goals he's scored is pretty much exactly what you would have expected from the average footballer. So yes, KOLO MUANI is finishing his chances well, but it would suggest that most of these chances are coming because he plays in very good sides that tend to have dominated their leagues over the past few seasons. So almost any footballer should score these. He's not exactly excelling or overperforming. So don't worry, that is the stats done there. I think we can learn a lot when we look at stats, but only so much. Ultimately, you need to watch a player and assess him from that point of view. And when I look at KOLO MUANI, I really get the vibe of a player who is pretty good at everything, pretty decent at everything, but he doesn't really have a standout area or an area where he excels. And that's almost sort of reflected in the way that he's played over the past few years, but also the positions he's played. He has been used right across the front three, on the left wing, the right wing, and also up front. That kind of points to the fact that he is well rounded, but has perhaps never truly excelled in one position enough to really nail it down. So what are we getting if we sign KOLO MUANI? What are we actually looking at? Well, initially, a really good physical strong player. He's around 6'2", maybe even 6'3". He's tall, he's strong, and he's really quick. Got an amazing stride length. He's a phenomenal athlete. He's got an engine, brilliant stamina. He can run for days. In terms of how that actually works stylistically, the way that he plays, it does at times make him a pretty useful outball, even when you're looking to play long. For example, you might be trying to play out from the back, the opposition pressure you high at the pitch and force you to go long. KOLO MUANI is pretty decent in these situations, and I don't think this is something that is normally associated with his game, but I don't mind his hold-up play. I think he's pretty good in these areas. Is he elite? No, and the Premier League would be a new challenge. The centre-backs are very physical in the Premier League. But I actually don't mind KOLO MUANI in these positions. I think he's pretty good with the way that he uses his body, and he is confident looking to bring the ball down. He's also pretty decent at his hold-up play with his feet as well. Now again, he doesn't excel here. That's key. He doesn't really excel in any area. But he is comfortable with the ball at his feet. He seems fairly confident. He wants to drop into these positions. And what I like more than anything is that he does actively show for these passes. And this is something that has really come into his game at PSG. You will see a lot of strikers who want to play on the shoulder, as KOLO MUANI does, and that is exclusively all they will do. They will refuse to do anything else, meaning that when your midfielders get on the ball and look for a pass, they're not really there into feet, okay? KOLO MUANI could have been that type of striker. He could have gone on to develop into that player, but I don't think he is. He actually uses double movements really well to make himself an available pass. See, what he will often do is use the fact that everyone knows he's quick. So he will sort of shape as though he's going to sprint in behind. He'll quickly dart to make the centre-back drop a yard, and then what he's going to do is quickly change direction and then move into the space that he's just created for himself. Now this is what we're talking about with a double movement. So he makes the first movement in behind to drag the defender, then the second movement, the double movement, into the deeper position. And this is something that I actually think Rasmus Højlund should look to do more, to be a more effective player on the ball. But this then of course makes him a passing option that you can go into. And we can see an example of this here. KOLO MUANI very much on the last man. He's actually offside at this moment in time. He is that high up the pitch. However, as the ball moves across the pitch towards the right hand side, this is his cue to start the double movement. Because as the ball moves towards the right hand side, KOLO MUANI starts to run. He starts to accelerate and sprint in behind. Now, of course, as a defender, when you see this, a striker who's very quick running in behind you, you feel that you've got to go with him, because you can't just let him run in behind, can you? So you've got to go with him, and we can see the defender starts to do that. You can see the defender starts to drop off. What you will also notice, though, is actually already, the defender is still reacting. KOLO MUANI has already made his second movement, and is starting to come towards the ball. And actually, when he receives the ball, he's got all the time in the world. This is really good play. It's double movements to make yourself available. And it allows PSG on this occasion to move the ball through the pitch, and you can see how this could then eventually, for example, lead to a switch, something that United might look to do. In this sense, I think KOLO MUANI is probably a more technical player than what people think. He is decent coming into these areas. However, once he's actually got the ball, his passing range is average at best. You can see that in the numbers in terms of his pass percentages. He's a very average passer of the ball. He's not horrendous. He doesn't put it out for a throw-in every time he gets the ball. He probably wouldn't be a professional if he did that. But he's not someone who's going to carve a team open. He's not a Harry Kane who's going to drop into this position and fire a ball forward through the wing-back. That's not his game. He's also not a Joshua Zirkzee in the sense that he's going to quickly combine with short and almost smooth passing, something we saw more from Zirkzee at Bologna last season. KOLO MUANI's not that sort of player. He's alright in these positions, nothing really more than that. What he actually prefers to do is try and get on the turn himself. He likes to use his size, his physique, to try and pin the opposition, and he's going to try and draw a centre-back into a position, pin that player, and then spin them. This is how KOLO MUANI likes to play. He doesn't want to drop in and link play and fire lots of passes about. Not really his game. He wants to get on the ball and drive and carry. That's one reason why he's been so successful in transitioning teams, because there's a lot more space available when you're in transition, so he can pick the ball up, he can drive through these spaces, he can carry the ball forward. That's where I would say he is pretty good. That's also why he's often been used on the wing as well, because he is a pretty effective ball carrier. He's not a bad dribbler. There are moments where it looks a little bit erratic and he loses control, but then in other moments he looks really silky. Again, very inconsistent with the work that he does, but that doesn't mean he's a bad player. He can carry the ball forward. I think this is really captured in these sorts of moments. This doesn't look like a striker, this looks more like a winger. Spinning into these wider areas, he wants to take the player on. What's important is that he is happy for the physical contact. He's a big, strong guy himself. He can sort of brush through those players, but actually the raw acceleration is quite frightening. I don't think PSG have ever really used this to its full potential, but he's a very quick player and his final ball in these positions tends to be pretty good. It's why he does pick up a few assists over the course of the season. But also in situations like this, more in the middle of the pitch, this is of course more of a striker position. But again, he doesn't want to quickly get this ball and look to fire a pass out to the winger. He wants to carry the ball, he wants to take the first touches himself. Now this is where, in terms of a move to the Premier League, it could be a real hit or a real miss. If you can carry the ball through the middle of the pitch, it's brilliant. United really lack this. If you can do this from a forward position, it is amazing. But in the Premier League, it is very difficult to do. And if, for example, in the French League, you are used to playing against, at times, some smaller players, the intensity is different, tactically it's not as refined, you get more space, suddenly you come to the Premier League where it's very difficult, you might start losing the ball in these positions and have a real problem and become really ineffective. Of course, right now, we don't really know which way that would go. One thing I would say is that physically he's got a good frame to protect himself in that transition to the league. You can see here, using his arms, using his body to protect the ball and kind of carry past players. I think he's really strong in this area. I love him when he's carrying the ball forward, but that is really how he wants to play. I think he does focus really on trying to turn, taking little touches to spin past players, use his body, and then drive. His game is a lot about drive. Is that something that Ruben Amorim really wants in his team? I'm not too sure at the moment. You guys are probably getting the vibe so far that I'm a little bit unsure about this guy. I've watched a lot of footage over the past few days, and I think there's a good player there, but there's not a complete player there. I do question whether Ruben Amorim would like certain parts of his game. However, one area where I think Ruben Amorim would really like him is his running power. Not with the ball like we've just spoken about, but actually without the ball. We know that Amorim loves a striker that can get into the channels, and you best believe that KOLO MUANI loves to do that. He loves to play in the channels. We've seen recently patterns of movement where the inside forward will drag a centre-back, This is often Bruno Fernandes doing this. Whilst Lisandro Martinez has the ball, and then Højlund will spin into these positions. KOLO Muani would love to play in this way. He would love to move into these channels. He's great at playing in this way. He loves these areas. He's really quick, again, strong, times his movement well. I think Ruben Amorim would like this about him. What he would also probably like is the fact that he can do it from both sides. Again, he has played on both wings in his career. He understands the movements on both sides of the pitch. And again, we could see something similar here, where Ahmad drops deeper, drags a centre-back. Can the ball now go in behind for KOLO Muani to run onto? Possibly. I think something else that Muani does with his movement is facilitate space for other people. Because if he's spinning in behind all day, and again, teams know he's quick, naturally they start to drop off. They give you a yard. Perhaps that's when Ahmad can receive the ball into feet, or Bruno Fernandes might get more space. I think Muani would be decent in that sense. I think he would open up the way that United play. He would make us a good transitioning threat, particularly in those games where Højlund isn't available. I guess the final thing to look at for today is actually in and around the final third. Ultimately, a striker can do all these things, but if they can't score goals, what's the point, really? Especially at Manchester United. We want goal-scoring strikers, and certainly we need that in the squad at the moment. Is KOLO Muani that? Is he a goal-scoring striker? The numbers would suggest yes. We saw right at the start of the video, he's scored a lot of goals compared to the minutes that he has played. He has been very effective. But again, then when we looked a little bit further at the XG, he sort of just finished chances that you would expect him to score. So in terms of his finishing, I would say he's an average finisher. Give him a chance, he's going to take most of them, but he's not going to be a game breaker, someone who scores absolute worldies. For example, you can see in his goals so far, they're all very much inside the penalty area apart from one. He scores easy goals, which in a way is a good thing for a striker. In terms of a more positive look, he's really good in the air. Really good on the end of crosses. Again, he's tall, but he uses that. He times his jump really well. He times his headers. His accuracy is good. We have seen several actually really important goals during his career already, where he's been rising above others, either at the back post or the near post, steering it into the back of the net. He is a good header of the ball, and that would be, again, useful for Manchester United, and that's where I really find myself with KOLO Muani. It's useful. If we were talking about United going and signing this player right now for 50 million, I would say turn around, run, and do not look back. Go nowhere near this piece of business. It will not work. I'm personally not a big fan of KOLO Muani. Those that know me will know that is the case. I'm not a big fan of the player. But I think on a loan, with United needing a striker who can do something similar to Højlund, but Højlund can't play every week, I don't mind the deal. I have question marks over how successful he would be in the Premier League. You know, so far in his career, he's used his physicality really well. Suddenly in a more physical league, is he able to do it to the same level? I'm not sure. And then once his physicality is more tested, does he have the technical side of the game? Probably not. So it would a lot of this depend on physically how he adapts. Can he dominate Premier League centre-backs? We've seen him do it against someone like Gabriel in the Champions League, for example, so perhaps he could. But I'm certainly not going to go out there and say that he absolutely should and that he would be a huge success. So I guess, in a way, I'm kind of sitting on the fence. But what I would probably lean towards is, if Manchester United let Marcus Rashford leave on loan, and especially if we were to sell Xerxes as well, we need something, right? We do need a forward. There's not many forwards out there. Financially, we are crippled at the moment. So one of the only options may be a loan. And KOLO Muani as a striker, not an inside forward, by the way. Not an inside forward. But as a striker, it might not be a bad bit of business for 6 months, as long as it doesn't cost us too much, as long as there is not an obligation to buy at the end of it, which there have been rumours of, then I think it's okay. If he plays really well for 6 months, explore the deal in the summer. If it doesn't work for 6 months, hey ho, we haven't lost too much. We go again in the summer and bring someone different into the club. So I think that is where I stand on this player, but I really want to hear your thoughts, because I think he does divide opinion. A few years ago, he was one of the hottest prospects in football. Everyone loved him, but even then I was never too keen on him. But how about you guys? Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Do you want to see him at the club? Should we outright buy him, or do you think a loan is the method until the end of the season? Let me know what you think, but apart from that, we are finished for today. So thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you have enjoyed this video, and as always, I'll see you in the next one.